Welcome to today's conversation as part of the exhibition titled The Nights Will Follow the Days, curated by Shalmali Shetty. Art South Asia Project and Serendipity Arts Foundation have partnered for the first time to support a curatorial fellowship program for a diasporic South Asian curator living in the UK. Shalmali Shetty, who's our curatorial fellow, and Mala Yamey, head of programs Art South Asia Project, will be in conversation around the SAF and ASAP Curatorial Research Fellowship today, which has also been supported by the Faizal and Shabana Foundation. So over to you, Mala.
Hello, you can hear me? Thank you so much, everyone who's come. It's a lovely little cozy gathering, which is perfect, so it's not too nerve-wracking. So I wanted to start by introducing Art South Asia Project. I'm going to abbreviate it as ASAP. ASAP is an arts education and development UK-based non-for-profit, and we work with initiatives to widen and deepen the engagement with modern and contemporary visual and applied arts through South Asia and its diaspora. So we work with institutions and individuals, and we support selected research projects, publications, archiving projects, and professional development work. We also work with events. So we offer grants, and we facilitate access to expand existing knowledge networks and create new ones, and connect and collaborate with expertise across the nations of Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, and the UK diaspora. So we're very, very fortunate to have our first curatorial fellow in partnership with Serendipity Arts Foundation. Sorry, my breathing is funny. And Serendipity Arts Foundation and ASAP came together quite a few months ago to start thinking about this. We were introduced by the head of Somerset House Exhibitions Programme, and we thought, how can we work together and how can we create something that matches both of our missions? And we came up with this curatorial fellowship for a diaspora curator living in the UK. And we launched our open call in May, or was it April? Do you remember? May, thank you. And the importance of this curatorial fellowship was to produce research and to create dialogues between the diaspora, Shalmali, and the artists in South Asia. And so we were very, very happy to put this exhibition on at Serendipity for the first time. This is also the first time ASAP is working on an exhibition, and the first time I'm working on an exhibition in India as well, so it's been a learning curve for everyone. And it'd be quite helpful maybe to, just for you, Shalmali, to start introducing yourself and giving us a bit more insight into your curatorial practice.
Thanks so much, Mala, for the introduction. I'm going to be a little slow because I'm talking to a lot of people for the first time. So for a brief introduction about myself, I'm Shalmali Shetty, and I am a writer, curator, and artist, now based between the UK and India. I've been working in Glasgow for the past 4 years since I graduated with the curatorial practice Masters in 2020, so 3 years now. And before that, I was in India. I did a Masters from the School of Arts and Aesthetics in JNU, which was a theoretical sort of background that I had, and previous to that, it was a bachelor's in painting and printmaking. So sort of moved from the practical studio practice to the theoretical research writing in academia to finally sort of bring together my production work, bring together the practice and the research through production and curation. And so I got the opportunity to go to the UK on a Charles Wallace Scholarship. So this is the next big step with Art South Asia Project, having received the fellowship this year. And because I think my aims have been to work between the two geographical landscapes and the two art worlds, to bring in a number of conversations that are already happening, but also coming from my own sort of background, my experience, and contributing to that. And this platform I have received through ASAP, and the support has been something I've been trying to manifest for the past few years, because it's not always easy to, receive that backing and the funded sort of research time and resources to be able to do that. And I think at this stage for me, at this stage of my career, it's it's come at a very good time for me to be able to do that and sort of push me further in my vision for the future, I guess. I don't know if
that's perfect. And maybe actually before you go into the Curatorial Fellowship, what were you working on? What was the most recent exhibition before this? Because it could be a helpful kind of stepping stone to understand your ideas and how you build into the Curatorial Fellowship.
Yeah, so I've been working in Glasgow for the past 3 years as a freelancer, writer and curator, being involved in a number of projects as a producer, working for artists there through, with writing, with funding letters for that matter, trying to understand what the art world in the UK is like, how different that is from my experiences of having worked in India. And it's a whole handbook I can write. That's one of the proposals I've given ASAP as a result, at the end of this fellowship, to sort of compile one. But so the project before this, I've been doing a number of co-curations and co-productions. I was on the committee for Transmission Gallery in Glasgow, which is one of the oldest artist-run spaces, a non-hierarchical committee. So I think that gave me a lot of backing and experience in terms of trying to work in this idea of a safe space, for that matter. Also, Glasgow in Scotland is very different. It's got a very different art world compared to anywhere else I've been. So I've been feeling protected and safe in that environment, which we'll come to later when we talk about the different art worlds I've been part of. So I think, so just before this, actually, I did my debut curatorial exhibition in Glasgow, which was supported by the Glasgow School of Arts, and that also was in relation to my larger themes, my research interests in archives, memories, hauntology, and material culture studies. I explored the idea of dreaming, and dreaming as that liminal space, that in between space where a lot is possible. So just to put it briefly and simply. So that exhibition also was a coming together of 5 artists through their sort of films, moving image works, performances, and photographs. That happened actually after I received the fellowship. So that process, the process to bring that exhibition together, also contributed to this line of thinking. And so a lot of my friends are like, oh, this is probably like a sister curatorial project that I put together here as well. And I would like to believe that, because it's exploring these different practices. And so I think a little bit about my research interest is, I've already mentioned it's to do with archives and memories and hauntology. And that's also trying to explore the relationship of the Global South, my familiar landscape of India, the Global South, with the its neocolonial relationship with the West, and thinking about how, for example, and thinking about storytelling coming from personal experiences, thinking about oral histories, and the idea of predictions, the idea of sort of this practice of predicting a future, foretelling a future, in contrast to established history making, established archival which is a colonial concept in itself. So looking at that, the two spaces of the past and the future through archives and the idea of predictions, I guess.
So maybe going on with what you just said, storytelling is a huge part of your curatorial project. What is the story behind the curatorial rationale and the story that all of us, when we were looking at the applications, got really excited about.
I'm glad to hear that. So for me, I think it comes from my upbringing in the kind of education I had in school, which was a Waldorf education. It's always about doing something. Like I learn things from doing it rather than just studying theories and from the experience of it. So I think that sort of plays into my curatorial process, where I bring in personal experiences through stories, through something I've personally gone through, and build on that to explore larger themes across the different, the bigger sort of theories that pertain to these areas of research. So the story for this exhibition is an experience my uncle had in my maternal grandmother's house. It was an ancestral house. So this is about this neighbor of my grandmother who passed away in 1992, interestingly also the year I was born. And she apparently was, so 1992, 25 years ago, before this happened in 2017, my uncle happened to be going on his daily walk. He comes back to notice there's this old woman in the neighboring house. He doesn't know who she is. On his return, he sort of sees a crowd of people around her, and she's going on about the fact that this is her house, this is her property, and apparently this property was going to be demolished. We had sold our grandmother's ancestral property a few months ago, so these were the last few months, remaining in that space. So the story, so it's basically my uncle sort of walking into this crowd, wondering who this person is. And a moment of recognition where he remembered this woman from 25 years ago, this lady who had passed away in her house, in that very given space. And so I think he was obviously very taken aback. He was scared. He called us up to tell us this happened. He had undergone this experience, and so I mean he received it in the form of a ghostly experience. And for me, I think it was a very interesting story in terms of, was it a ghostly experience? Was it the return of this woman coming back to her land beyond her passing, beyond her lifetime? Or was it the memory that my uncle experienced of this person from 25 years ago? So this idea of memory as spectral, memories in association to landscapes, individual associations and links and relationships you have to a place, a certain homeland, is what I started thinking about to build on my exhibition that explores ideas of migration, displacement, and largely colonialism, and how that is affecting the post-colony, that the identities that we experience today in a post-colony, in largely the global South. And so I don't know if I've...
No, that's great. And also, obviously, the story led into your research process.
Yes.
And so what was your research process? How did the Curatorial Fellowship kind of help you realize the story into an exhibition that we see today?
So the research process, first of all, the fellowship gave me the time to, the funded time and the resources to think, to read, to connect with people, importantly, because there are a number of artists I've been admiring, wanting to work with, and have been aspiring to work with. And I think the platform really offered me that opportunity to connect with all of the artists and academics and curators that I've always wanted to meet, based in the UK. And so I proposed a list of, 20 artists initially, and just trying to think about how I would like to connect with them and work with them. But that obviously had to come down to a few artists, given the limitations of time, of resources, of space. And so I finally chose the 5 artists that I'm working with, that I've showcased right now. And these are artists who are already working with these research teams as part of their own practice. Shiraz, for example, has been thinking about the histories of the Indian Ocean that we don't necessarily talk about. You know, when, for me, coming from South India as well, I haven't experienced the partition. Definitely my grandparents haven't. I mean, I haven't experienced it in terms of even having grown up with the stories of it. My grandparents haven't experienced it. My ancestors haven't experienced it. So we have a very different history in the south of India that isn't always really talked about. Another history of migration can also sort of explore the indentured labor, the movement that happened in the early 1800s after the abolition of slavery. And so this is a history I started thinking about only after I went to the UK, because that's a landscape that not only talks about people, generations, and the people from sorry, my brain. So it's it's not just the partition, but also this line of inquiry that I was interested in. So which is why I invited Shiraz Beju, who is a Mauritius artist from the diaspora, from the Creole community, who talks about these histories and sort of feeds that into his films. And I can talk about the work in detail later. There's Manem Wasif, who talks about, through his photographs, about the plight of the Rohingya refugees crossing the borders from Myanmar to Bangladesh and India. And so it's all of these works are a poetic take on this experience of their past. Amba Sayal Bennett talks about her grandmother's experience of moving homes, three different ideas of a home, from her original sort of house in Dera Ghazi Khan in the Pakistan region to the camp, these camps and tents that were set up for the displaced, to finally her move to England and finally settling down in a third version of that idea of home. So this transforming and transmuting sense of home that Amba talks about, whereas Samakshi talks, she has recreated a part of her grandmother's house through thread work. So you'll see, I don't know if some of you have already seen the works already, and some of you, the exhibition. And we also have Alia. Alia Syed is the fifth artist filmmaker who talks about this relationship to landscapes. The landscape is an archive of pasts, of experiences that keep coming back. This idea of like the return, the haunting, that shapes us in our present, current, state of affairs. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. And also, would be helpful from the 20, how did you get to the 5? And who were the formative people? I know you spoke to a lot of people to kind of get to your final project. Who were the people who helped you, and how did they help you?
Lots of people, actually. I've been in conversation with a number of academics and curators. One of them is Virangana here, and that really, that conversation really helped me also in terms of thinking about artists beyond my own initial list of artists. And Samakshi was one of the artists that Virangana suggested that would sit well with my my exhibition. And so I think it was over the 3 months, the initial stage, I was like, oh, I've got these 20 artists, I'm not even sure I can get in touch with them, because there was that feeling of like inadequacy, I guess, initially, because I wasn't even able to accept the fact that I got this fellowship to begin with. And then the fact that there's all this time to, get in touch with artists, actually work with them. It took me a while to let that sink in. And so I think, like I mentioned, it was also about the time, space, and resources. I obviously cannot work with 20 artists for a whole exhibition in a festival format. So how do you bring it down to a few? So as part of my exhibition, actually, I had 6 artists. One of them was Sophia. The artist who isn't showing now is Sophia Karim. But I think it was a whole process of like, how do you present certain works in the context of a festival? How do you, does something work? Does, the content of the works also matter? So I think in Sophia's case, it was a very interesting sequence of conversations I had with her over the last 2 months, thinking about, currently the global conditions with how the political landscape is, for example, what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening with the art world in Germany, and thinking about censorship, thinking about the ideas of, all of this basically. So I think that conversation with Sophia was very enlightening in terms of that. We've had, there's one part of the conversation I've included as part of the exhibition. We couldn't bring her works eventually to the festival. And I think there were a few other artists I wanted to get into touch with, but I realized I'm running out of time. And these are all busy artists, big artists who need a lot more time to, sort of work through a proposal. But the artists that I've, showcased, some of them also made new works for the exhibition. So I think, that's one of the reasons it reduced to, like, say, the initial 20 to the 5 that I'm showing right now. Some of the factors that I'm sort of laying out here.
I'm glad you reduced it. I don't think we could have done 20.
But I think that's the thing. It's realizing that for an independent exhibition in an independent or private gallery, it's easier to get in touch with a number of people, thinking about communication, thinking about logistics. But for a festival format, it's very different. And that's a realization I came to only when I started working on the festival itself. So this thing of like, I had this initial vision, a very ambitious vision of how I want the show to look, but it definitely transforms and changes in the process to become something else, which I'm very happy with how it looks right now. But I think it's also coming to terms with the fact that logistically, practically, a number of things are not going to fall into place eventually, and so that's been the process. Something else I wanted to add is that given that this was a project between the UK and India, I also chose artists who were working with moving image and filmmaking, just in order to reduce on the logistics of, when it comes to shipping and transport. Something as practical as that. Also made me realize that I can't work with all the artists that I've proposed. Which is why I have a few video works. The initial proposal was to only work with artists making, filmmakers making moving image projects. But then I think personally, I can't sit in an exhibition for too long that is just showing video works. It gets... I either am very impatient, or the fact that it's also a festival and trying to be, acknowledging the fact that people want to move, keep moving, seeing other shows. And so I think as a curator for me, it was like, I can't make viewers come and sit in my exhibition for too long. Alia's film itself is 24 minutes long, and I don't know if anybody is able to sit through it through the entire length of it. So I think from my experience of having visited other festivals in Biennales, it's like, I am impatient, I can't sit through films for too long, so let me just reduce the video works and include a few more of these, objects or physical 3D or photographs even. And I think today, from an experience, I just want to share that. We've been having a cab driver who's been taking us around Goa through this week. I took him to the exhibition, and he was more drawn to obviously the installation and the photographs more than the films themselves, because films can get very conceptual at the end of the day, and it needs a lot of time to sit and think, and these are histories that are not always, it's not discussed in our daily lives, and not for someone like Digambar, who's our driver. So he wanted to take pictures with the installations rather than go to a dark room and sit down and watch what is happening. So I think that's another thing that I learned from this process of putting together a show.
Maybe just to go back to what you slightly mentioned, what are the highlights and what are the challenges of working in a festival context for the first time? And then my second question is going to be, what have you learned about being a curator from this process? But we'll start with the festival highlights and challenges.
Yeah. So I think for the first question, a lot of things, like I mentioned, it's a festival format is not an exhibition format. One needs to come to terms with the fact that a festival is going to be, showing across various venues. There is not always going to be a big team, trying to, it's not always possible to have everyone come and do things for you the way you would expect that in a private gallery. It's about the sharing of resources. It's about the sharing of skilled labor and the team that needs to be sort of spread across the different venues. And I think that's one of the challenges I definitely faced in terms of trying to get people to run some of the videos in time, because I guess I also freak out a little too much when I shouldn't. And otherwise, I think a festival format has really got me thinking about a lot of things in terms of what I mentioned about certain works that cannot be showed, certain works. What is the kind of public that's coming to see these exhibitions? What's the kind of public how is the public going to react to certain content, which might not be something one would think about in an exhibition, private exhibition space. So a lot of things have come to light. I wouldn't have even thought about, being a curator for just a gallery is so different from being a curator trying to put together a show for a festival. And what I've learned as a curator, everything. I think, like I said, it's one of the first big things happening for me at this stage as a curator in my career. And to do that, to begin with a festival, an exhibition in a festival, to then, I think it's all of that. And I also wanted to add that I don't remember anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't remember.
I remember.
You remember that.
I think it's also, I was talking to Mala this morning about how different it is also from working in South Asia as one landscape and the UK as another, but also in the UK, how different it is to work in Glasgow and London. Like I said, Glasgow is it's a shell. It's got its own small community. It's a safe space. Everyone's there to protect everyone. Nothing can go wrong in Glasgow. London is bigger. Delhi is bigger. Goa, Bombay, all of the other art worlds are very different from that. And I think so. It's also a lot of things I've come to understand in the process of having put together an exhibition in Glasgow before this, and how different it is to do that either in London or here. Just thinking about basic things is, how labor works, how skill works, how time works, how paid labor there is on an hourly basis. So people come, very specific people come, very few people come, put together, install the show, and they leave. But in India, it's very different. You have everybody sort of coming together, helping you. You have more people than you require sometimes, and that can get confusing. And not just with the festival, even other spaces that I've worked before in Delhi. And so, I think it's that. It's also thinking about how agreements and contracts and, paperwork doesn't really it doesn't really have so much significance here as it does in the West. But that also means that sometimes processes can get delayed in the UK, and here you're actually getting things done faster. So I think it's got its own sort of pros and cons. And through this process, that's also something I've learned, that not every space is going to be the same. You need to expect, changes. You need to, anything can happen anywhere, and it's not going to be a homogeneous process.
And thinking on these learnings, what would you do differently if you got given this chance again?
Oh, I definitely start earlier. I think timeline-wise, I tend to do things I tend to take my own time to do, things. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed with work. I just feel like I don't know what it is. It's, all of these things coming together. And this time when I got the fellowship, actually, I had already committed to a number of other things. I also received, in the same week, I received a writing like a grant as part of Edinburgh Art Festival and the Skinny magazine in the UK. So it was a week of excitement, but then also realizing that, there's so much I've committed myself to, and am I going to be able to pull this off in time? And I think the past 5 months, literally, I haven't slept because I think that the fact that I've been, it's exciting but also intimidating, because again, it's a festival, and it's a lot of people that I will be showing, and also the artists that I've promised, people who are already established in their careers. I've asked them, they've agreed, and it's also to do justice to their work and not mess up in how I'm installing them, for example. So I think all of that, and which means that the next time I do something like this, I need to start much, much, much in advance, draw out a timeline, make a calendar, work on things, be in communication. Sometimes I also forget I need to be in communication. If I'm going through something, I need to tell, this time, I think there were times when I was like, I'll figure it out. It'll all happen. And I don't realize that I need to ask for help. And I think asking for help is such a big part of the process. And so it's been that any project, just start like 6 months in advance, I guess. And the research happens, I think, because I've also I also practice as an artist. My brain is not so, rigid or categorized when it comes to planning and organizing my time. So that's one of the first things you need to do as a curator, because curation is not just being creative and doing your research and being lost in the process of doing that. It's also getting in touch with artists, looking after the logistical admin side of things, which really is time dependent. It's also about taking up these different roles of I don't know, the past week it's been painting the walls as a painter, as a carpenter, knowing how to do some of these like tech install. I think just having that basic knowledge about everything really helps. And another thing I've realized is I need to carry a toolkit, like a toolbox with my own material in it, scissors, tape, a measuring tape, pencils, a book, all of that, because if one person who has all of this is not available and is not available for the next 2 hours, then that's a lot of time spent waiting for them. So this idea I came up with, that I want to create this curator's handbook of a South Asian curator working between these two landscapes is something I proposed to her as a result of this.
Maybe a nice place to stop before we maybe have some questions is, what are you going to do next? What is the next plan after the fellowship, and what do you hope the fellowship would have helped you to get to?
The fellowship has definitely opened up a lot of avenues for me. Not even until end of July this year, did I imagine all of this was going to, like, things are going to change for me. Because, like I said, I've been manifesting that push, that support to really grow. And on receiving this fellowship, a lot of things have changed. I have been able to, like I said, access a lot of the resources, such as even like archives and libraries in the UK, through contacts that ASAP has put me in touch with. And also going to Freeze this time was really great, because it's not easy to otherwise, just go to Freeze with. I mean, this was actually meeting gallerists, meeting artists and curators, and sort of engaging with their works. And that's very different from just going and visiting a place or an exhibition. And I think also some exciting news is that this fellowship has resulted in some form of recognition, and I've been invited for a curatorial program as part of atThe that's happening earlier next year. And I think so all of this is, a step towards achieving some of these projects that I will be doing in the future. Will obviously, I don't know, it's all of these experiences that I'll be gaining that will contribute to the future projects that I'll be doing. So yeah, I'd say one thing has led to another, and I still aim to obviously not settle in the UK, because that's another question that keeps coming up. Do you want to settle in the UK? But no, it's going to be really working between the two spaces, and visa dependent again. That's a whole other headache. But yeah.
Thank you, and I'll open up to questions, but one thing I wanted to say is we will, if you keep posted for ASAP and Serendipity, we will, in the new year at some point, be announcing when we next have a fellowship, but that will be news. And I also wanted to take this moment, I know that Nandini, that's right. My brain. Thank them, but I just really wanted to thank the Faizal and Shabana Foundation for supporting this fellowship, because we couldn't have done it without them. So yeah.
And I couldn't have done it without all of you coming together. And so I really want to sincerely thank all of you for supporting me and also going through a lot with me. And coming for Mala, for the fact that you've come all the way to Goa to help me with the installation as well. The last 2 days, I think, have been us trying to oh my God, let's figure this out. Some things are not working, and at the end of the day, let's just calm down, breathe, do things together. So it's all worked out, and I'm really looking forward to the next iterations of the fellowship, because it's important to have a platform like this, especially based in the UK, because it's again not always easy for countries in South Asia to have these conversations amongst each other, given the political tensions that we have. So for an organization based in the UK to actually facilitate all of this across, even the artists I've chosen are from Bangladesh, Pakistan, India. I wish I had also reached out to artists in Nepal and Sri Lanka. That was the initial idea as well, something I forgot to mention. But so this is the starting point for me. That'll grow to include all of them. But yeah, I think that's that an organization like ASAP has really, I feel so much more confident in what I'm doing now. And it's been a learning process, not just professionally, but also personally, because I've been also spending a lot of time thinking about, myself, and there's been that inner sort of personal development as well as a process of this. So all thanks to Mala, Noor, and Faizal and Shabana Foundation, and Serendipity Arts Festival, and the entire team that's been so gracefully making sure everything happens and is realized in time. Thank you.